So schools may be shut to deal with the COVID-19 outbreak, but there's still concern about young men in particular who are due to undergo the traditional rite of passage during this winter season. The Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa has been meeting to discuss how it's going to move ahead during this pandemic. There are 62 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the country, and more people are still being tested. Contralesa wants a fresh approach to the issue. Joining me now via Skype is its General Secretary, Zolani Mkiva. Mr. Mkiva, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for being on the program. So a lot of people were waiting to hear from you news on whether there's going to be a suspension, a postponement of the traditional initiation season, but you're not quite there yet. Why?
We are not quite there yet because there's a lot of communication and information sharing that still needs to be done in that effect. So we are in a process of engaging our structures at all provinces as well as the regions of the country to ensure that once we have done, extensive consultation, then we will take a decision. But also, most importantly, we still have to interface as well with the government in terms of its plans. Because remember that once the president had made this order, there is a suggestion that the June holidays may be cut by half, which June holidays are the ones that are predominantly used for the initiation season. If you cut it by half, then you are closing down on the opportunity for the initiation to go ahead. So we still need to get that understanding. Perhaps there was no application of their minds in this respect. Hence, we are still interacting with the government in that respect.
And beyond the issue, of course, of the school terms and how they may be altered to deal with time lost as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic, science tells us at this stage that the reason why we're seeing it spread in other parts of the world is because they're currently in their winter season where a lot of people have the flu. It's colder weather, which allows the virus to thrive. Now, given that a lot of these young men would go to these initiation schools at our winter locally before possibly we reach the peak of our outbreak, is that not enough reason to call off the initiation season for winter altogether at this stage?
There is a suggestion that this virus it becomes on a fertile ground indeed during the winter period and the cold season. And we still need to get precise confirmations in that regard. And if that then is the case, we will be left with no other option but to do consider exactly what you are talking about. As I say, we still need to do a lot of consultation and we also need to interact with the government. But if the climatic conditions which give fertility insofar as this virus being spread across, then I think we'll be left with no other option but to seriously consider that. But as I say, we don't want to speculate at this point in time.
But from your just initial conversations with the traditional leaders in the various provinces, are they leaning toward a cancellation, a postponement?
No, we have not yet arrived there, Mdagamkhototo. Allow us to consult extensively so that we can educate society about this, so that we can ensure that we push as much information to the ground level so that then people, speak in one voice and in unison once we arrive at that point.
Do you know how long the consultation will take?
I don't think the consultation will take longer than a period of 2 weeks. And remember that we are still far from the season. So I think we have got enough period, especially during this time of the shutdown, to communicate extensively with our people, even though there is a limitation in terms of the numbers of people who must attend these meetings. But we've got established channels of communication as the institution of traditional leadership. So we will find a way to start that communication. In fact, at other levels, it has already begun.
Let me ask you about something else, another call that you made in the past few days, that the communication around this COVID-19 pandemic be made available in indigenous languages. Is government doing that now?
There is a lot of work that is going into that at the moment. I have spoken as well with the Ministry of Arts and Culture, and they are trying their best to assist in this regard. And as I say, there's still much needs to be done, but at least I can confirm that there is some work that is getting done.
So given that you are citing this possible limitation to the availability or accessibility of information, how are rural communities feeling at this stage, given that we're almost 2 weeks since the first case of COVID-19 was reported? Are they nervous?
Well, yes, there's a lot of nervousness and anxiety and uncertainty on the part of the rural communities. And you must appreciate that the majority of South Africans who live in rural communities form part of the poorest of the poor in the country. There are dire implications insofar as this is concerned. The issues of unavailability of water in certain rural communities, and as people are being sensitized that they should wash their hands with soap and so on and so forth, some of the people, it's far from it. So our engagement with government at all levels of government is that let's make that water available as soon as possible, but also we want also added resources to be able to meet some of the things that are required at this time and age and stage, so that even rural people can sort of access all the things that are used by other people in other parts of the country. So indeed that we think that there is a justification for the anxiety that we see amongst the rural people. But as leadership, we are communicating with our people through the traditional channels to ensure that we call them to be calm and that we are doing something about this. And with the little resources we have, we are doing our level best to communicate with our communities.
I'm glad you mentioned water, because the Water and Sanitation Department has now said water tanks will be made available to communities that are battling with the issue of clean drinking water in particular, because hygiene is going to be important during this period, etc. But that also raises questions about why all these years into this administration, clean running water is still not available to much of the rural areas in the country.
Well, I think there is an opportunity for us to close ranks insofar as some of the outstanding things that they have been outstanding for a period of time. This particular challenge and this particular issue of this virus, we must use this opportunity to ensure that we roll out some of these basic services that we have always wanted. I don't think now we should be politicizing the matter that much. I think we call upon the unity of the nation at this moment to combat this virus. And we are happy with the fact that Water and Sanitation is taking this decision to avail this water tanks for our communities. And this needs to be commended, and we must ensure that those trucks move in our areas as soon as possible. And they must work with us in ensuring that the movement of those water tanks go to areas of convergence first and foremost. We understand the terrain better. It is for that reason that we said we are stepping out, we want to provide leadership, we want to assist our government as people who master the terrain wherein we administer the affairs of our villages.
Last question to you then, Zolani Mkiva, tonight. The other restriction that's come into force is around mass gatherings, no more than 100 people allowed to be in one area. What is that going to mean for the other traditional ceremonies outside of the initiation season? How will people run funerals, for example, and the many other traditional gatherings?
It's a tough call. It's a very difficult one when it comes to our communities. As you know, that a funeral for the communities is a public event, and the community comes in. There are no invitations that are issued. It's a communal spirit. But through this interaction of ourselves as leadership and the national and provincial as well as the local government, we're going to do our level best to say people must keep a distance, because it will be difficult, for instance, for this coming weekend for some of these things to happen, efficiently and effectively. But we call upon all our structures to ensure that they communicate this message in that fashion. Wherein we are unable to limit the numbers, we are saying people, they must keep, reasonable distance amongst themselves where they gather.
Contralesa General Secretary Zolani Mkiva, thank you so much for speaking to us. We are unfortunately out of time.